Welcome to Table Talk, the place for deep conversations in the Geekverse. And trust me, when we tear into a subject, we go deep. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. Each episode, I'll be talking with one or more creators, authors, illustrators, publishers, or other movers and shakers in games, TV, books, movies, or other areas of the Geekverse. Regular guests include Douglas A. Burton, the author of Faraway Bird, a multi-award-winning historical fiction novel of the Byzantine Empress Theodora. He's also the author of The Heroine's Labyrinth, an alternative story structure to the hero's journey that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. That structural framework frequently comes up in our analysis of story. Brianna De Silva, she's the director and co-writer of The Cultists, a Lovecraftian comedy mockumentary-style web show here on YouTube, and the author of The City of Reckoning, an epic fantasy novel of political intrigue, the ethics of war, and young love. Cameron Pasha is a screenwriter, director, novelist, and was a writer and producer on the series Kings, a producer on NBC's Bionic Woman, and a co-producer and writer for Sleeper Cell. He's also written for the CW series Nikita and Roswell, New Mexico. He's been breaking news from inside Lucasfilm, Disney, and Hollywood. His analysis and commentary have become very popular on YouTube. We regularly meet to discuss and analyze stories, and when we do, we dive into graduate-level seminars on story structure and writing. Come on in and let's go deep. And when I say we're going deep, I mean you'd better bring your hard suit. Other guests have included Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels Once Upon a Unicorn, the creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and the author of Star Wars: A Pirate's Price, the book that explains why the Millennium Falcon is on the planet Batu at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Mark Tassin, the creator of the World of Ataltis, head of Mechanical Muse, former director of the Gen Con Writers Symposium, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. Let's see, who else?
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. Not yet. Maybe soon, though. But I have interviewed Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games, crowdfunder extraordinaire, and publisher of many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. Brian Colin, sculptor of the world of Revelo Monster Busts, and the creator of the vast grim dark horror RPG. Ajit George, the Dungeons & Dragons author. We talked about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and the development of the Journeys to the Radiant Citadel.
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, the commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Well, actually, that interview got rather spicy, so I think I'd better just keep that one to myself. Kate Wilson, a YouTuber, actress, host, and prolific geek guru who's now working to make a new show dedicated to the world of tabletop gaming a reality. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride, because it's time to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and all of geekdom through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger, ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. There we go. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to what's kind of now the official start of what we were sort of calling Season 2, Episode 101. We're now past the 100 marks, and we are now on Episode 101 of Table Talk. It is so good to have you here, so welcome to my home, welcome to the office, and welcome to Table Talk. There's been about, a 3-week break or something in here, but man, I don't even feel like it. I was like, okay, there's going to be a break after episode 100, and then we'll all be able to read a bunch of stuff and prepare for the next 100 episodes. But man, I feel like I haven't even had a break. I mean, I feel like I've still just been going. So tonight, we are back with Douglas A. Burton. Doug's one of the most popular people here on this channel to have. So we're going to be talking about The Heroine's Labyrinth. We've talked about The Heroine's Labyrinth, I know, a lot on this channel. The book launched like 2 months ago, 3 months ago now. I'm not sure. We did it in Austin here on live on Table Talk. We said that once everybody ordered the book and got it, hopefully everybody's read it. I've read it, and we said that we would come back a couple of months later after the book was released, have a Q&A with Doug after we've all read it. I've read it. I've got my notes here. So welcome back, Doug.
Hey, all right.
Hey, Doug.
What's going on, everybody?
Let's see. We got lots of people here in the chat. Let's take a look at this. We got Jason here. Jason is in the chat. Jason 96.
Oh, awesome.
Welcome, Jason. We've got Sable. Welcome. We've got BGD. Good to see you. Michael J. Pastor is here. So good to have you back.
Oh,
welcome. Let's see. We got, Okay, Bacon Gaming. All right. Now, who is Bacon Gaming?
What's going on
If
there?
you want to follow this channel here, James Bacon. This is James Bacon. And he said that he might even be adjusting his YouTube channel name because he's working on launching his own channel, which is really cool because that means we're kind of establishing our own little network here. So we will see. So at the moment, James Bacon, if you can click, I think you can click on his name in the chat or whatever and say follow channel or go to the channel and then click subscribe or something like that. So James has been talking to me about just this recording YouTube videos and things like that. He's getting ready to do that. And he said he might even post a video tonight or something like that. So he's been recording one. He said he's writing the script. So everybody go over there and subscribe to Bacon Gaming. That's James Bacon. So subscribe to that channel and we'll see what's going on here.
I will be subscribing to that right after the show.
Let's see.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, Tomocrat is here. Welcome.
Who is this?
And I even saw that Brianna is here in the chat. Brianna's even here.
Hey.
So, all right, we got. All right, yeah, we got a fantastic crew here tonight.
Awesome.
So, Doug, do you want? I know you've got some announcements and things like that. So, do you want to tell everybody? I mean, I think everybody knows. Oh, and Drudenfuzz just showed up. Hey, Drudenfuzz.
Oh, very cool.
So, do you want to let everybody know what's been going on with you since we have had a Heroine's Labyrinth discussion so far, and what all is happening there, and also what is happening forward with you? I'll bring up your website here.
Yes, so it's been wild. I this time around, unlike Faraway Bird, I did not do any major buildup or any sort of promotional effort for the Heroine's Labyrinth. I just did, I didn't have the funds, and B, it was taking so long to finish the tarot cards that by the time everything was ready, I either had to push it back 6 months, and I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I want this out. Anyway, it was a little bit of a mistake because after the book came out, you either knew about it or you did not know about it. So the number of reviews and everything, it's been very stagnant. So I have hired a company that their exclusive job is to book me on podcasts, as many as they can for the term of the contract. So suddenly there's going to be a lot of promotion of the Heroine's Labyrinth. And we start small and we build up on the channels. And they know, they have podcasts that, target the writing industry of California and or New York. Like they got some pretty big channels on the list where we're aiming even collegiate or academic podcasts. So we have some high ambitions there. And that all starts next week. So I'm very excited about that.
That's exciting.
Very excited. Yes, 100%. And it goes without saying that Table Talk really got me ready to do that because even when I had my onboarding process with them, they're like, explain the Heroine's Labyrinth. And I was able to launch right into it. And it came out polished and clean. And so it was a good thing. And Table Talk's been huge there. So,
well, and I guess they might ask you, I don't know, they ask you, so have you ever even been on a podcast before? And you're like, yes, I have.
Well, they did. I was like, I haven't been on a podcast. I go, but I've been on a couple of YouTube channels, and I was like Table Talk, and I mentioned, because it was recent, Retro Nerd Girls channel. And her and I have been having a lot of fun over there. And I have to say, we had a Q&A that went 6 hours, Heath. I think Sable
the last Q&A was 6 hours long?
6 hours long, man. And I think Sable was the one. He's like, we have just broken the Table Talk record. I was like,
no.
Only if you don't count Star Trek 6 being a 3-parter, which is 15 hours. So I think that record still stands. But I will say it was a freaking blast. BGD was there. James Bacon
I was there for some. I wasn't there for all 6 hours. I was there.
Right,
for
you were there. But there was a good chunk. Sable was there. There was a good chunk of Table Talk folks over there. And man, it was like a little takeover for a little bit. And they were in there. They were talking, and there was a lot of energy in the chat. And it was great. Like I said, it went 6 freaking hours. But it was awesome. We had a blast.
So yes, Retro's channel. You've been over there.
Yes.
You've been over there twice now. Hey, Sherry.
I've been over there twice now. One, we did Amadeus and like a watch
you
party.
went 3 times. You did Amadeus with you did a watch party.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did something different with her. We did a watch party for Amadeus, and it has over 600 views. It's it came out, like, people are watching it. So that was fun. That's one of my all-time favorite movies.
So that's Retro Nerd Girls channel.
Retro Nerd Girl. If you don't know who she is, she's a great channel to subscribe to. She will go into some deep dives on films as well. She has a storehouse of knowledge on older movies. I think her wheelhouse is 60s, 70s, and 80s. But she will go beyond that, depending on the film. But my upcoming schedule, there's some overlap here. Next Tuesday, right, Heath? We're doing the City of Reckoning.
Now, get ready for this. Yep, where is it? Right here. I got mine right here.
By author Brianna De Silva. Some of you may have heard of her.
So we're attacking this book. I've got so much reading to do over the next.
Right. This is where I'm at. So I've got to speed it up. This is a long book. I will say, you never know when you read a book. You just never know. It could be immediate that the writing is off-putting or subpar. Like, you just don't know. And if that was the case, it would have been extremely difficult to read a book this size. I am happy to report this is a beautifully written book so far. The writing, the prose, the chapters that I'm reading, it is all extremely competent writing and easy to get immersed in the world. I'm very impressed with Brianna's book so far. I can't wait to finish it. So if you haven't started it, definitely grab City of Reckoning. It's available on Kindle too, and get it going. We're going to be here next Tuesday to talk about it.
And yes, so that's next Tuesday.
That's next Tuesday here on Table Talk at 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. So, yeah, 1 week from tonight. Exactly.
And then I have on Wednesday, I have my first podcast. It's on a very small channel, but like I said,
tomorrow or a week from tomorrow?
A week from tomorrow. So next Wednesday.
Tomorrow. Okay, so next Wednesday. Okay.
At what time did we schedule it? Let me see. Next Wednesday, the 12th of June at 6 p.m. I'll put the name of it here in the chat because it's got some grammar in there that's unusual there. But anyway, that's the name of the show, the podcast I'll be on. It's only going to be a 30-minute podcast. This is really to get it started. But yeah, that's going to be going on. That'll be fun. And then kind of an extension of something that happened at Table Talk. Heath had hosted an interview with Matt Bird, who is a writing guru. He's got a very popular book out there, The Secrets of Character and The Secrets of Story. There's actually 2 books there. We asked initially if because he has a podcast with a partner of his whose last name is Kennedy, and
James Kennedy.
He's like, I don't want to talk about scheduling you unless my partner reads the book as well, which I totally understand. And his partner read the book. He loved the Heroine's Labyrinth. So I will be on their podcast next Thursday, which is the 13th at 9 p.m. That one should be a blast. And they think that one will be around an hour and a half max. So, yeah, Sable, I think you're right on that, on the pronunciation. Let me see.
Okay, so now I put a link to the Raven Keep Discord server in the chat. So if you're not part of the Raven Keep Discord server, click that and join there. Join that and be sure you're connected to the YouTube group of channels. So we can post anytime Doug is live. I posted when Doug was live with the Retro Nerd Girl. I posted when Cameron's been live on some different shows. So, the different friends of the channels and things like that. The Table Talk channel can not only have an announcement when we're actually live on Table Talk, but if it's somebody like Doug, like Cameron or Brianna, or any of our friends here who are live someplace, or if a pre-recorded podcast just dropped, we can post that in the Table Talk channel. So if you're watching that, then if you're following that, then you'll know when. Hopefully, I would love it if you know when any of our regular guests are live someplace else if you want to go watch them. And yes, so Matt Bird did endorse the Heroine's Labyrinth, and that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Secrets of Story podcast next Thursday night at 10 p.m. at 9 p.m.
Yeah. 9 p.m. And without the promotional thing, the I will say it's been extremely positive with the very small number of people who I've shared the ideas with. So that's why I decided to invest in the name of the company I'm working with is called Podcast Cola, which I think is short for collaboration, but Podcast Cola, and they are there to book you on these podcasts. And so I'm just betting on myself here. Not even myself. I'm betting on the ideas of the book that will work if I can get the word out there. So I'm just going to go for it.
All right. Yeah, I know. I was thinking I haven't posted because I just finished. I had 40 pages to go in the Heroine's Labyrinth last night. So I finished it last night. So we need to be sure, if you're here, definitely write a review.
Yeah.
For Doug. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say part of the issue by not building up or I didn't do any NetGalley program, which was easy. I don't know why I didn't do that. By not doing all these things, what has happened is there are almost no reviews on Goodreads and Amazon.com. So there's, I think, 15.
We got to do that. We got to come through for Doug.
Yeah. So I was just going to ask everybody, if you have read the book, please go to Amazon and go to Goodreads, leave a rating at the least, please. And then also, if you care to, you don't have to, because it is much more time and to write a review. If you want to write a review, I'd appreciate it.
But even like 3 sentences could be a review.
It could just be great book, and that's it. That's the review. Or this is the worst book I read. I seen this crazy guy on Table Talk. Avoid this book at all costs. That could be your review. But whatever it is, just post it to Amazon and Goodreads, and just help me get the word out.
All right. So I'll say on my side of things, Brianna and I have been working on this relaunch of The Cultists. Because The Cultists, if you don't know, let me post a link to the YouTube channel. Would love to have you subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Cultists.
Heath, when are we doing the interview for The Cultists?
I don't know. Okay, because I keep saying it keeps going and going and going. It's because I'm not finished writing the RPG yet. I'm about to tell everybody I'm writing an RPG, which we're doing live online, live online on our live streams, which I'll be live tomorrow on the morning grind at 9:00 a.m. on the Heath Geekverse channel working on this. And we're getting so close to being done with that, but I got to get finished writing with that because I want to have a finished beta and playtest draft to be able to send out to people. So what's going to happen is, okay, first of all, let me tell you, The Cultists is my comedy web show about a group of modern day Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. We got season 1 of the show, which is 10 episodes. Each episode is about 5 to 8 minutes long, is on YouTube right now. So that's the entire first season right here. Cultist season 1 is up right there. Would love to have everybody. We are putting together a Kickstarter to celebrate the relaunch of the campaign. We got shirts. We've got stickers for different, like the Cultist coffee that we always talk about. Here's Witch's Brew.
I've got that.
Take off the Starbucks logo and the Cultist coffee. We've got all of that, and we're working on an RPG to go with it that we want to play with some members of the cast as well, so they can reprise their role in a gaming environment. So yeah, Brianna in the chat is the director and co-writer of the show, and she is also our graphic designer. So she helped with all of the rebranding of this entire show on its own YouTube channel and stuff like that. And it looks beautiful. I have actually just been working on experimenting with re-editing the entire show in vertical format for shorts and reels.
Oh, wow.
And so like the first part of this, the series came out today in shorts format. So it's there. My son is worshiping Cthulhu, and I hate it. I said my son is worshiping Cthulhu, and I hate it. So I've been re-editing the show to go out in shorts format on YouTube. We can put that on Facebook. I'm putting it on Facebook. I'm going to put that out on Instagram. I'm trying to figure out how to get a TikTok channel and put that. So we're completely relaunching this show. We got grand plans for it. We're going to bring out this Kickstarter with a role-playing game based on it. So to answer your question, Doug, I want to do 3 solid weeks of promotion.
Okay.
and then do 3 weeks on Kickstarter. So 3 weeks prior to Kickstarter, but I need to have this game draft completely finished so that I can send it out to people. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the game draft finished, and I got to get all of the prices on the shirts and things like that. You can't summon Cthulhu without you can't summon Cthulhu with sour cream and onion shirts. We got a whole line of shirts for this. But I still got to get the prices on some of the shirt printing and things like that. And then when I have that, I'm going to take a big deep breath. I'm going to clean my house, and then I'm going to dive into 3 solid weeks of promotion for the cultists, like where I'm going, all out trying to get it out there. And then we will go on to Kickstarter for 3 weeks. So part of the going all out with production is that Doug is going to interview me on Table Talk. And then also Brianna will be here, and we will do a watch through and review of Cultist season 1. A review. We're not actually going to watch it on stream, but we will do a discussion and everything of season 1. Season 1's on YouTube. So I don't have a date for that yet because I haven't finished my stuff. And then once I do that, I'm going to go, okay, deep breath, clean house. Now it's time to schedule promotion. So that's how that's going.
Heath, they're not going to be softball questions. We're going to get right to the heart of it.
You're going to get deep into this.
This is going to be hard hitting. Yes.
Just
let me know. Obviously, I'm happy as heck to help you out. Well, and by the way, the more I've kind of dipped I'm trying not to watch them all at once yet because I was waiting for the green light. But I did my toe in.
You did a great job at the writing, at the directing, at the graphic design, at everything, Brianna. Everything out there. That's what you did a fantastic job at. Brianna has been a huge part at I see. Actually, that's what Sherry Lee said. Exactly. All that you do. Exactly. So there we go. All right. So that's what's going on over here. So if you tomorrow morning, just by the way, tomorrow morning will be part 10 of the RPG design. If you are here and you're not on the Heath's Geekverse channel, the Heath's Geekverse channel is gaming related. And so I will be live tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. getting close to finishing up this book. Adam M. Botsford, you can see her over there, did the cover for the book. Okay. All right. Lord, that was a lot of stuff.
That was a lot of stuff. All good stuff, though.
I know we haven't been here in about 3 weeks, so there's a lot that's going on. All right. Okay, so we are here to talk about a Heroine's Labyrinth, and I know that we have talked about this subject in extreme depth on this channel. We have been over here. We have talked about the Heroine's Labyrinth. Got Doug's book right here a lot. So obviously, what we're not going to do is say, "Hey, Doug, what is the Heroine's Labyrinth? Will you please tell us what that is?" We have been over that again and again and again. We've been over that. So I did read the book. I finished it. I took some notes over here. I got bookmarks in here. And what I was basically trying to pay attention to as I read through here were things that I didn't think, and there's been a lot of discussion, but that I didn't think had necessarily come up on the channel before. So if there was something that I found in the book that was like, oh, we haven't talked about that, I highlighted it, starred it, and and to bring it up. And of course, if you in the chat have questions that you have because you have read it, then you're welcome to put it out, and then we will talk about that. So does that sound good, Doug?
That sounds great. There was a lot in the book that I didn't intentionally mention because I wanted to really stay focused on the core concepts when we had our discussions. But as you saw, there's a much more expanded discussion in the book.
All right, so actually, Sable's already in here with the super chat. So yeah, here we go. Sable Phoenix is already in with a $10 super chat. You mentioned
Sable, you're awesome.
Oh, I think there might be more coming here. He says, you mentioned that Misery has a poison apple scene with gender roles reversed.
Yes.
I don't know this. She hobbles him rather than poisoning him. You mentioned the attack from below before, a la Jaws, etc. Do you think, perfect timing, that the masculine version of the poison apple comes in a surprise attack, such as the attack from below, or at least a means of removing their mobility without so much as attacking their awareness? Deep question.
Well, there's a couple layers to that one. So let me try to break that down. Sable never throws out simple questions. which is great actually. But so yeah, she does poison him actually. She gives him those pills. Remember, he starts to tuck them under the mattress and hide them. So there is a poisoned apple there. However, so real quick, just to take one step back, for all of you wondering why we're talking about Misery, Misery is almost a beat-for-beat, beautiful example of the Heroine's Labyrinth with the gender roles reversed. And when I say that they're reversed, I mean reversed in the sense that I've been discussing the Heroine's Labyrinth, where you have a female protagonist as the heroine and a male and or female villain who is the masked minotaur. In Misery, the heroine structurally is Paul Sheldon, who's played by James Caan.
Is it this movie?
Yes, Stephen King's Misery. That's exactly right. Kathy Bates.
I don't know this movie.
You have to watch it. It's a great movie. Kathy Bates won Best Actress for her portrayal of the masked minotaur. So the gender roles are reversed, and yet you find the exact same imagery repeating. And so Sable's getting into some nuance. So first off, Misery is a great example of a male heroine with a female masked minotaur. And so the poisoned apple scene I'm talking about, he actually breaks his legs. He's injured severely in a car accident, and he is bedridden. And she's poisoning him. She's giving him these pills, which knocks him out. He gets wise to this and begins to avoid taking these pills. And of course, there's that famous scene later where as he's getting better and she finds out he's becoming a little bit more mobile, this so-called like church do-gooder pulls out a sledgehammer and just pounds his feet into mangled, contorted, limbs. And she settles that. So what Sable's asking about is, do you think, or do I think, or is it worthy of consideration? The idea of how did he word it? She hobbles him rather than. So she does both. She does do both. So the poisoned apple is usually an internal. It's an attack against free will. It's something internal, and it usually accompanies imagery of the unconscious heroine. Laying prone and with the masked minotaur hovering over the top. That's classic imagery. And we have this in Misery. We have the unconscious, Paul Sheldon is laying restrained, which is classic. And the masked minotaur hovering over. I do think it's possible. I have noticed, and this is just a bizarre observation, that male characters do get punched, kicked, and physically assaulted an awful lot in movies, even playfully. It's almost become a cliche in my mind where you see a female accidentally punch him or hit some guy in the head, or where guys just take these physical attacks like like a good sport. But it is possible that male characters are easier. And this is just a possibility, easier to physically attack like that. Maybe it's a little bit easier on the audience to accept a guy getting beat up than vice versa. But she does still poison him. I just want to make that clear. There is still an internal attack against his free will. And for those who have seen Misery, you could see her trying to extract the sacred fire. She forces him to rewrite his story. So remember, the sacred fire is a creative power and an attractive force. And in the male character there, his creative power is writing. And it is an attractive force because it's also got some celebrity. She's so enamored with him. She's his number one fan. And so she exhibits all the possessive love of the masked minotaur. And she forces him to rewrite the book that has not come out yet, which is the masked minotaur controlling and trying to dominate the heroine's sacred fire. So it's a beautiful role reversal of the Heroine's Labyrinth. Let me see the rest of that question. I want to make sure I answer this right. You mentioned Misery as a poison. So I don't think that is necessarily true yet. I guess I'd have to look for more examples. The idea of hobbling or injuring a male character who's cast as the heroine. I would have to study that more. It's a good thing to consider and look for. And as far as the attack from below, I don't know. I don't know if there's a relationship there, but a surprise attack would be in some way a poisoned apple. Remember, it's an intentional attack, usually upon free will, in order to disable, disorient, or capture the heroine. And so a surprise attack would be one way of delivering a poisoned apple. You're trying to do it. You're trying to trick the heroine. You're trying to circumvent the heroine's ability to resist or fight back, is what the poisoned apple is doing, unfortunately. So it is. It's a dark concept when you start to unpack it.
Does this help with that?
And Quigley Down Under, Cora, in Quigley Down Under, Cora tries to help him out in the fight at the docks, but ends up clocking Quigley with the or. Yes, now that I've said it, look for it. You'll see it. Male characters get hit in the head, punched, slapped, kicked, sometimes just for laughs. It happens an awful lot. I'm like, man, males characters are sometimes punching bags.
Groin shot, yes, that's like 1990s comedy right there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the groin kick is so you just don't see it that often. I'm not saying it never happens, but I just don't see it that often with female characters, and for good reason. No one wants to be watching a heroine get hit in the head or punched. So maybe it is funnier when it's a guy. Who knows? Well, that's a good question. That was actually like a 3-layer question there. I am curious about knowing what it means. I do want to study this more, and I do intend to follow up with more thoughts in general about story tropes or story designs. But the attack from above and the attack from below is something that I'm sensitive to now. So I will look for that, and I'll see if there's a connection with that in the poisoned apple.
All right,
yeah,
let's.
Go ahead.
I'm going to bring up a portion of the book here. I'm going to bring up, add the stage. So now we've got. Oh, okay. So there we go. That isn't exactly what I intended to have happen. That isn't either. Okay. Well, how about that? Okay, that works.
That's
okay.
Cool.
So here we got part of the book up here. This is what we did with what Truby's work. So I can bring it up here. So I wanted to talk about. Trying to get a stylus or okay, I want to talk about this. So you've got 5 different guidelines here, and here's how you set it up down here. You say the Heroine's Labyrinth differs from other books on the topic because of 5 storytelling guidelines.
Right.
Okay. And now you list out these 5 guidelines. I want to talk about each one of them.
Okay.
But I was unclear about who these are for.
Okay. They're really for writers, I would say, mainly, because most of the books I've read, especially ones written by women, are heavily have a heavy focus on feminism, which of course is not a bad thing. It doesn't it doesn't like ruin the analysis or anything, but it does tend to cause these previous books to stray away from a focus on writing. So I wanted to establish very clearly that I am not trying to attempt political or social commentary, that my job, as far as I saw it, was to stay focused on storytelling so that I could produce and share a book that is useful to writers. Because part of the problem I had, for example, when I read Maureen Murdoch's book, The Heroine's Journey, which is loaded with great stuff, the problem was it was very difficult to use all of that stuff. Like if you look at the table of contents, whereas I have 18 archetypal designs, she has like 42. Like it'd be very difficult as a writer to use that or apply that. And then there's a lot of social commentary and interviews with her contemporaries. And what I really think was going on in her book, for example, was just issuing a challenge to Joseph Campbell, a good challenge, a rightful challenge, to say, what about all these archetypes or archetypal experiences that women understand or recognize that aren't in the hero's journey? So what she was really doing, in my opinion, my interpretation was saying, this is how women feel, and this is the female experience. And the female experience doesn't always jive with some of what Campbell suggests in the hero's journey. So to me, I didn't want to analyze womanhood her book is called A Woman, the subtitle, it's called The Heroine's Journey, A Woman's Quest for Wholeness. And it's a great book. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I would say were blind spots before. One of the major things she mentioned that really stuck with me was the absence of mother figures in heroine-centric stories, which is true. So she was addressing like a treatise on womanhood. And what I wanted to do with those 5 points was to establish what it is I'm doing. And I wanted readers to know up front what to expect. If you were looking for a feminist critique or a treatise on womanhood, I'm the wrong guy for that. And this isn't the book that is going to do that. So that's what that's meant to do. It was meant to kind of box in the discussion, because any of these topics could go, it could go into philosophical or political or social commentary or debates very rapidly. And in my first draft of the book, that was a major problem. I had so many subtangents and so many things I was trying to address that the book became almost unreadable. So those 5 guide points were for myself.
Okay.
And for everyone else who didn't know what they might be getting into with this book.
Okay. So I want to be clear on that before we look at each one. So
sure.
This is you trying to, because it says the Heroine's Labyrinth differs from other books on this topic because of 5 storytelling guidelines. But those guidelines, it says storytelling guidelines, but this is guideline. This is guidelines for how you approach the topic. Then, when you said
guidelines
I got to write this book on this subject, I'm going to give myself 5 guidelines.
Right. So let me see if I can find the page it's on. So
it's on page 5.
Right. So this was to box in.
I'll answer that later. We'll get to that.
Right. The whole point of this was to box in the discussion. It was to keep me focused. It was to keep. How come I'm not finding it here?
Page 5.
Here, do you mind just reading them off?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through them. I'm going to bring them up.
Okay.
So here we are.
Back.
No, here we are not. Here we are.
Okay, right.
We are.
So
number 1, it says the heroine is always sovereign, regardless of portrayal, historical period, or restrictive circumstance.
Right. That is rule number 1, and that is it was not rule number 1 when I started, but the more I wrote, I'm like, this is the first rule was we will always stay focused on writing, and that is a good number 1 rule. However,
well, now wait, but this one doesn't say anything about writing.
The next one does.
No, the next
number
one does.
2
Let's give with number 1.
Well, my point was that originally number 2 was number 1 was my point.
Okay,
but I bumped it because there were several instances where there are heroines that may be easy to view as being portrayed in a reductive role, like Andromeda from Clash of the Titans, just for one example, or the 2-dimensional Little Red Riding Hood, right? So my point is, when I was studying heroines, I didn't care if they were a secondary character like Wendy Torrance in The Shining. I didn't care if they had a reductive role in the film or in the book. I didn't care about any of that. I was going to treat every single feminine character as though they inhabited a sovereign space for themselves within the story. And by doing that, it gave me a chance to expand my view of that character. Like Princess Leia, for example, in Star Wars, that thinking helped me re-look at her role in Star Wars as almost central to A New Hope. So my point was, yes, there are bad portrayals of women in stories. Yes, we can criticize heroines for a variety of reasons, but I am going to treat them all as though they're absolutely important and 100% sovereign for the purpose of analysis. So that became rule number 1.
Okay. This is an important question then.
Okay.
Not intended to be a hard one, but a direct one. Like if we said, okay, we're going to study heroines in story.
Right.
And you said, I'm going to study heroines in story, but I've got this presupposition that they are sovereign. Like we'll talk about this word sovereign right here. Like maybe we use the word agentive, that they are agentive and active in the story. Maybe, I don't know. But you're using the word sovereign, so we can talk about what that means. But if you say, I'm going to do an analysis of the corpus of feminine-centric stories, and I'm doing it with the presupposition that they are sovereign in their own stories.
That they are
color your analysis than if you said, I'm going to do an analysis of all the corpus of feminine stories and find out what's out there. Why have a presupposition? Because what if we did find out that some strands of feminist thinking are correct, and that
they
in
are
our corpus of feminine that there isn't a feminine story outside of its relationship to men where they are subservient?
This doesn't nullify, right? This does not nullify a feminist critique of other heroines. There could be very completely valid feminist critiques that one female character or another is very poorly portrayed, does not have enough dialogue. Like, I've read these books. These are totally valid points. What I'm saying is I'm going to try not to focus on that in order to pull the maximum amount of meaning out of this a female character, for example, in terms of understanding her. For example, like Andromeda in Clash of the Titans. She's chained to the mountain. She seems to have almost no agency, and Perseus comes sweeping in and saves her. That is the kind of portrayal of female characters that a feminist in a book might criticize, and criticize validly, right? It's a valid criticism. She's not doing much. She seems to be, she doesn't seem to have agency in this portrayal. The reason I needed this is because, well, that's true, but it may only be true because as far as Andromeda is concerned, she is trapped in the worst form of a captivity bargain. And we just haven't seen the rest of her story, because there are moments in both a hero story or a heroine story where the hero or heroine does indeed lack agency. But on the long scale, that's just one phase that they go through before they re-engage or re-emerge or find themselves again or find their confidence again, like in Top Gun. So to take a snapshot of a heroine and say the whole story's bad because she's not doing much, I think was sometimes counterproductive to an analysis. Does that make sense?
I understand. Yes, I understand that. But I guess my point would be, did your realization that the heroine is sovereign in these stories come as a result of your analysis?
Yes.
Or was it so it did come, because originally you said that it was a presupposition that I'm going to go, I'm going into this as one of my rules.
I just said this book differs for 5 reasons.
Okay. So you did an independent analysis of female-centric stories and found that the women in the stories are in fact sovereign.
Well, yes. So that wasn't a presupposition to start my studies. That became a rule I had to follow to help me solve problems, which was if let's say several books point to Andromeda and say Clash of the Titans is problematic because of the portrayal of Andromeda, well, then it doesn't help me to study Clash of the Titans. And then that became a problem for my analysis. So I was like, well, I still want to study Clash of the Titans and I want to study Andromeda. And I see now that I have the heroine's labyrinth more and more defined, that Andromeda may actually be in a captivity bargain there. In fact, her constellation in the night sky is a freeze frame of her breaking free of her chains. So I was like, that's still a powerful moment for Andromeda. Now, the point was Perseus shows up, and that's great. Great news. This guy shows up. If I was chained to a mountain and someone showed up and rescued me, I'd be pretty dang happy that person showed up. Does that solve my underlying problems with my society, with my native culture? No. So being rescued by a potential heroic partner does not solve Andromeda's underlying problems, and yet it should not diminish Perseus being heroic, because he is being heroic. So my point was to take a step back and view some of these portrayals of women, some of them, not all of them, that could be problematic, and view them through the lens of it's just incomplete. We don't know the rest of Andromeda's story. And so by having rule number 1, I could appreciate Andromeda even in a reduced role, because I saw her as being on a wheel of her life experience, a snapshot instead of the full arc. So that's what that rule was meant to address, being able to appreciate the heroine as a sovereign being, even in a state of captivity, who doesn't want to be there. We just haven't seen the rest of her story. So that's why that rule moved up and up and up into rule number 1.
Michael challenged me and says, no, that Heath, you said that. No,
you said the presupposition. Right.
Okay. So I wanted to be clear because I'm not sure what that's, I was not clear about this because I'm not trying to put words in Doug's mouth.
Sure.
I thought that he agreed, but if he did not, then that's important. So this was discovered.
That was a rule that became
a discovery after your analysis.
Right. That became an important rule and it moved up. It was like rule number 4 for a while. And then the more I kept going, I'm like, you know what? This heroine matters too. Like Wendy Torrance, she always gets a lot of crap because she's crying a lot and she seems very unheroic. But but The Shining became, I realized it's a hero-centric story that is focused on the Minotaur. So that rule helped me reassess The Shining as a hero-centric story where the writer and the filmmaker chose to focus on the Minotaur. And then you cast Jack Nicholson. He's got a lot of star power. So that rule helped me break a lot of that up so that I could see a heroine. I could see her in the story and not treat her like a wooden dummy or a puppet that doesn't count. I treated all of them as though they counted.
Okay, so what do you mean by the word sovereign here? Because I don't think
agentive. I would say agentive is a good word, meaning she, even in a state of captivity, has a mind of her own, has aspirations and dreams, has a desire to escape captivity, that this is a condition to which she does not want to be in. She does not want to be here. So I always treated the heroine in any story, no matter how small the role was, as someone who mattered and did not want the reduced role she was in. We just see her in this one snapshot in this story. And that was a reductive role. But the heroine herself, we have to accept, would never be, isn't a reductive person.
Is this the same sense in which heroes are sovereign in the hero's journey? Would you use that term there?
Yes, I would say the same rules should apply to male characters, absolutely. But historically, the vast wealth of these stories had male leads. That was very common. That's a lot of what the feminist argument is. Like, God, all these are so male-centric. What about the women? And then when they look for the women, they see that some of them have these real small roles. But now, it's 2024, there are a lot of stories about women. And so I have as far as the Heroine's Labyrinth, I have a complete picture, a framework to pull from. And now that I have this framework, it allowed me to see even these secondary or minor roles for women in bigger stories with a male lead as important. A single snapshot, perhaps, instead of just, oh, she's not portrayed well. So it gave me a chance to elevate all heroines in all stories, whether they had a reductive role or not, and treat them as important. That's essentially what I mean by that first statement.
Okay, we're going to get back. We're going to go to number 2 here in a second. But actually, James Bacon actually comes in with a $10 super chat. Thank you, James, which is actually fantastic. James says, so what do you specifically mean by heroine? Provided that heroine is typically a term for a protagonist, you equally apply the term heroine to heroic females at large, as well as female heroes. This is an important question. What do you mean by heroine? Because, yes, you apply these archetypes to people who are not the protagonist of a story.
Right. So, and that became a thing.
And you apply them to men because a heroine.
There have been times.
So what do you mean by a heroine?
Okay. So I would say the classic. No, it's a great question, actually, and gives me a chance to maybe explain. It originally means exactly what you think. A female protagonist who's the lead of the story. That is the classic definition of what a heroine is. For me, naming the structure, the Heroine's Labyrinth, was to name it after the type of protagonist I was studying, which was a female protagonist, which was a heroine. However, as I began to study more and more, and I began to, and this became an actual structure, a framework I could use, I found that, like in The Shining, just to stay in the same example, I could apply the structure where Wendy is the heroine, and she is structurally, and Jack is the masked Minotaur. So although he's the official lead, structurally, she's the heroine. So heroine became a structural term at some point for me, as well as a female protagonist. So I've used them in both of those contexts. And secondly, like in the movie Amadeus or Fight Club, where the heroine is a male lead, I'll refer to that character as structurally the heroine, because structurally they are in terms of the framework. So I mean it to mean a female protagonist, to honor the exact type of protagonist I studied and whose stories showed me this pattern. And I also now use it structurally, that he or she is structurally a heroine. So you could take someone like Andromeda, right, the side character, a smaller character, and say, if I reimagine the story focused on her and she's the heroine structurally for herself, then she's in a captivity bargain, right? That's what this is for her. Her native culture has imprisoned her, which I know structurally happens to heroines. So now I can look at even a minor character and say, she, in her story, in her worldview, she's the lead character in her world. She's structurally in a captivity bargain.
Okay.
So there's a lot. So I use the term structurally as well as classically, I guess you could say.
Okay. So how did this develop then? Because we're going to get to number 2 in a moment. But if okay, we start with a very classic definition of what it means to be a heroine,
right.
A female embodied person who is the protagonist of a story.
Right.
Like we start there, and then we start to say, are there common, well, first of all, the realization that, okay, stories with that physicality do not often do not conform to the hero's journey. Question: do they conform to their own structure? Do they conform to a different structure? And you answered yes, they do. And then you answered that. But then in coming up with that, you defined a structure, and then you realized that sometimes people without that physicality, without being the female embodied, Batman at times, Captain Kirk at times, also follow this. So I mean, so it seems like heroine. I mean, it's because we have been using these terms, hero and heroine, because we've said over and over and over again on this channel that females, female embodied, can go on the hero's journey and do, and we've got movies that exemplify that. We also have men, who go on the hero's journey, the male embodied. So we have separated the physicality of being male and female from this journey. So you talk about in this book the hero's journey being an external journey and the heroine's labyrinth being an internal journey. And I love the way that these things complement each other. So it seems like this structure often goes along with the female embodied, but that this is actually more about the person who was undertaking an internal journey. Correct.
So in fact, the more I study stories, the more I see just how prevalent labyrinth models exist in stories. And you and I have even spoken about, even in classic hero's journey stories, once that story continues, they tend to settle in somewhere, and that somewhere becomes the labyrinth. And then you suddenly so my intention was, all these years, we've had something called the hero's journey, and that was named after the classic mythological hero who tended to be a male protagonist. And those were the stories that were studied. So that Joseph Campbell named after this hero. This hero's journey, I'm going to name it after him, is what Joseph Campbell had said, basically. This is the hero's journey. So I named this structure after the heroine because I was studying heroine-centric stories. So that is the initial intention behind using that terminology for the heroine's labyrinth. But more and more, as I've come to kind of master the concepts and structure, I've begun to use the term much more structurally. So like if there was a female on a hero's journey, I'd be like, structurally, she's the hero.
Structurally, she's the hero, right?
She's the hero.
Right.
So I don't.
Yeah.
So to me, the term became less gender specific and more structurally
and more
specific.
structural. Right. Yeah. And I think that's really important. I think that's really
important.
We've got the yin and the yang. I don't remember which one's the yin, which one's yang, but we've got the hero's journey, and you're providing the opposite of that. And so there are times, the independent of the physicality of the protagonist's body, when you are undergoing an external journey or an internal journey, and you are articulating and calling the heroine, partially because of historical reasons, like you're talking about the hero being the word, to be the person undergoing the internal journey. I love it. I love that.
It started from a historical desire to name, this. Well, not even just a historical desire, but it came from studying heroine-centric stories. And I did that when I did that, I was not thinking about writing a book. I was trying to solve a problem with a female protagonist in particular. So I was doing a specific thing. I was trying to solve a specific problem. And what came out of it was this. And since nobody had this, and I believed that this was new, I named it after the heroine because I found it studying female protagonists. That's how it started. And it has advanced into a structural heroine.
Okay, Brianna sent in a super chat here, says, would it be accurate to say this tool of sovereignty is a way to expand? She sent a super chat to call attention to this chat, I believe. Would it be accurate to say this tool of sovereignty is a way to expand your analysis rather than letting it get boxed in by literary film criticism issues, which are technically a different discussion and beside the point of the book?
Yes. I don't know if I could have said it better, Brianna. That's perfect. It allowed me to break free of valid criticisms. I'm not saying that these are bad criticisms that boxed me in and I had to get rid of all these bad. No, they're valid criticisms, but it prevented me from analyzing certain things because it introduced almost a prejudice into how, like, I was like, oh, that's just Andromeda. She's not a real heroine. She's nobody. She's a reductive role. Well, that blinds me then to looking at her and treating her as though she's not like that. So, Brianna, I love how you said that. I might even steal that and give you credit. Be like, this is the way to view sovereignty in the analysis by Brandon Silver.
I like that. I like that a lot because I would say because there are several ways to look at it. Because if you go in with a presupposition, that's not going to work. And if you have the discovery, but if you say, hey, look at this, and actually I have the perfect example of this that we will look at this later. If you took it one scene of a female character and then make the judgment of that, but you put in here the entire story. We'll get to that. We will get to that. We got some other super chats coming in. Bacon says for $10. Thank you very much, Bacon Gaming. For $10 says, oh no, wait a minute, we just did that one. I'm sorry, that we did that one for 15 minutes. Okay, we got through that one.
I was like, man, he's hitting me again with the same one.
No, but Bacon, he was not satisfied with that answer. He's coming again. Okay, so Bacon Gaming for $5 says, so what? Oh no, but he does come up with it. He did have a follow up. So what does heroine mean?
It is a follow up. Okay.
Through the lens of an aspect of the heroine's labyrinth. And I think that's the way this ultimately ended up, right?
Yes.
That it's any character who is undergoing or this arc.
Narrative model.
This narrative model. Okay.
Right.
And that can even be a secondary character in a particular story.
Right.
Because we've talked about how often they exhibit the archetypes of this, because they could be undergoing this arc in their own story. We're just watching somebody else's story.
Right. We're skipping. We're not giving that character, that heroine in the background, we're not giving her enough credit in some cases to understand what she's doing. We just see her in the snapshot and we say, red X, you're out, you're bad, you're a bad character. Maybe there are still some very bad heroines, poorly written heroines out there. Just like there are bad male characters, there's bad characters. And sometimes this rule it won't protect or help an analysis if the character is poorly written, in which case the analysis becomes more helpful to figure out what they're not doing. Maybe they should have had a better labyrinth defined, or maybe the writer didn't establish the sacred fire clearly. So, but like Princess Leia, for example, is a great example. when you say A New Hope, we all think it's Luke Skywalker's story, and in a lot of ways it is. But because of rule number 1, I treated Leia as though she were the heroine of her own story for her scenes. And lo and behold, I discovered she was at the end of Act 2 and the beginning of Act 3, and that she goes in sequence, almost like clockwork, to about 5 to a fleshed out arc of the heroine's labyrinth. And think about it, Darth Vader, he bumps into Luke once in the film at the end. Oh, the Force is strong with this one. That's it. He goes to blow. He was about to destroy Luke. It's just another rebel starfighter until Han comes in, right? Vader's entire issue is Leia and Vader, all the way through the film until it becomes Vader and Kenobi, and then for a brief little hiccup, it's Vader and Luke.
That's true. It's Vader and Luke at the very end.
It makes sense with the framework. So that rule helped me look at it and be like, so Leia's not just a secondary character in A New Hope. She's in the middle of a broken truce, and that's what opens the film. And now it allowed me to view her without literary criticism, prejudice, leaving a prejudice in how I'm viewing her. That's what that rule does.
I've got you. Okay. I think I'm getting that. So here, because I want to, my intention is to understand, because let me restate and you tell me if this is correct. Okay. There may be some line of analysis that says, we'll use Princess Leia, for example.
Sure.
Look at Princess Leia and how insignificant and secondary she is in a story. This is character, and then I can look at a bunch of other movies with a secondary character in there that's a woman, that's the love interest and romance and whatever else, and go, look how they are always secondary.
Right.
Okay. I guess I'm still thinking about the presupposition there, because someone could come to that analysis with a presupposition that female characters are always secondary and therefore blah, 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 and list off a huge list. Okay?
Right.
But if you said, hey, wait a minute, listen, I'm looking at all this analysis where it's starting with a presupposition that the female characters are insignificant and then giving me a long list of why. What if I actually took what the female characters are doing seriously?
Yes.
Is there something to construct there? So in that case, you might be starting with a presupposition. I mean, might be. I'm just saying. You could be saying, like, wait a minute. No, instead of going into this thinking that, oh, look, every time I see a female character and look at this long list of movies, they're doing something that's secondary. If I said, no, wait a minute. What if I actually took their arc seriously?
Yes.
What will I find? And so that's where you went.
Right. And that became an emergent guideline for me because it helped me.
Okay.
Right. It helped me solve a lot. Like, think of Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi. Now, she's in that slave outfit, right? There's a lot of valid criticism about that portrayal of Leia in Return of the Jedi. All valid. It objectifies her. It seems to be a very reduced role. It's not a good look, right? I've even heard people say, shame on you, George Lucas. All valid. I'm not saying that that's not valid criticism. What I'm saying is, I see her in a captivity bargain. She willingly went in there. She did it willingly. She's literally in a state of captivity, and she did it in order to help free her friend. So I see a structural purpose behind her role in Return of the Jedi that I might not have seen if I just X'd her out and said, oh, what a terrible portrayal, and there's nothing there for me. There's nothing of value.
I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
So, yeah.
I got you.
That's a great line of questions. All of this these are some of the best questions I think I've heard.
Okay. Well, I would hope so, because we've been through this. Like I said, I did not want to rehash.
We are not rehashing
or something like that. I did not want to rehash that. I was like, what did I see in this book that had not been addressed? That had not been addressed on stream. That when I read it, goes, okay, wait a minute, I got some questions about that, and that's one of them. And this is heavily philosophical, because we go deep, because it's like, let's talk about sovereign heroines. What does the philosopher say immediately? What do you mean by sovereign, and what do you mean by heroine? Like, you can't even answer that question until you understand the meaning of those terms. We have 40
Man.
people watching, by the way. So
Do we really?
please do like the stream. This is
awesome.
So please do like the stream. Okay, before we go, let me go to, we got some super chats here. So Sable Phoenix for $20 says, in other words, the hero and heroine capitalized are themselves archetypes within an archetypical structure. Not necessarily the lead or protagonist of the story. Their physical sex is subservient to functional moral role.
Correct. I think... yes, that is what hero and heroine has come to mean for me when I discuss them, because you're totally correct. They are archetypal in and of themselves. They're not you, right? It's not a living person. There's a representation of a human being or an alien or an android. They're representative of humanity on some level.
What is it? Oh my God. What's the AI one that, but anyway, the woman,
Ava.
Ava. Yeah. So there you go. She's an android. Right. I mean,
right.
But she's
right. So we are talking about depictions of
I'll be right back.
Sentient
I'll be right back.
Characters in stories. So in that sense, they are archetypal in and of themselves. They are stand-ins for us on some level. So yeah. So the more I've gotten into this and really studied this, it's important to refer to the archetypal protagonist. And I'm using the term heroine structurally because we're in the heroine's labyrinth. And I named it after heroines in the old-fashioned way, which is a female protagonist, because that's what I studied. So there is a surfacey, old-fashioned, I guess, version of what heroine means. And then there is a structural, and I think a more important view of what heroine means in story terms.
I mean, because I think that's I've got you there. And by the way, if you're here, we got 44 people watching now. If you will hit the like button, because that will push this stream out to more people who are subscribed and things, and who might be sitting there on YouTube right now, and YouTube just isn't pushing this out to them, and they would love to be here for this discussion. So if you're liking this discussion, please do hit the like button, and it might bring other people who really wish they would be here in the moment and in the chat with us. That would be great. So we would love to have.
And yes, absolutely. And Sable, that was a great paraphrasing. Brianna, you had a great. So you guys are doing a great job of summarizing some of the things that I'm attempting to express.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, we got lots of comments I'm going through. Michael Pastor sent in a $1 super chat. Where do I? Was that calling attention to something? We got lots of comments going by.
Okay.
What? I'm not sure. What? Thank you very much, Michael. If you were trying to call attention to something, let me know. I just didn't see it. Okay, wait a minute. Let's Brianna's here. Brianna's one of the people who's like, frankly, I guess I don't see the assumption of sovereignty as a presupposition. We're assuming women and female characters, by extension, are not inherently passive and have their own will and desires, etc. What is the alternative? The alternative just feels like sexist assumptions to me. No. That's not how I intended that. It wasn't to assume that they didn't, because the assumption that they didn't might be sexist. But can I assume that? Can I assume they do? And we're not. And remember, we're not talking about women here. We're not talking about women
Correct.
In the physical world. We're talking
Correct.
about the representation of heroines in a particular corpus of storytelling.
That's right.
So I'm not making any kind of assumptions or any type of anything about women in the real world, which is Doug's number 2 we're about to get to. We're just looking at their role in a particular corpus of storytelling. Right. And if I assume that they do have role, let's use the term agency, they do have agency or they do not have agency. If I start with either of those presumptions, like I'm going to do some analysis of female stories and I'm starting with the assumption that they do have agency. Well, do you know what? By the time you're done with your analysis, you're going to prove they have agency. If you say, I'm about to do some analysis of this corpus of storytelling, and you know what? I'm assuming that women do not have any agency. By the time you're done with your analysis, you're going to have a conclusion that they don't have any agency. If you start, I'm going to do an analysis of the corpus of this storytelling, and I don't know what the role of women in these corpus or heroines in this corpus is, that's at least on the surface a more objective way to determine what has happened within this corpus. It's not saying anything about women in the actual world. but it is you. What is your starting assumption when you approach the analysis of a particular corpus of stories? Because you could also do this. I mean, you could do this analysis and like Doug's analysis is within a limited corpus.
Yeah.
By that he says in this book, he's not trying to overawe you with, do you know what I noticed happened in a 6th century, Chinese, but whatever, Polynesian, this that nobody's ever heard of here when you're talking to an audience which is predominantly U.S. writers in the 21st century. Doug isn't trying to overawe you with that. You are talking about a popular corpus. What happens within a popular corpus of storytelling?
Right.
Am I right?
And Brianna, what it did was there are some very unpopular heroines in a lot of feminist literature that I have read. So I have heard the critique. So that rule also helped me get around that critique without invalidating their critique. And that's important because I didn't want to invalidate some very valid criticism that's out there of many portrayals of women in stories. But for my purpose and for our purpose as writers or role players or screenwriters or memoirists, where structure and organizing your story around time-tested, meaning recurrent themes or recurrent patterns in stories, the critique could get in the way sometimes. It could get in the way of my ability to understand what was happening with a heroine in a story who may not have been the lead. So anyway, but that's why that's there.
And hey, by the way, now we have 52 people watching. So if you hit the
awesome.
button,
Welcome everybody.
More people in. So and now 54. So welcome everybody. So please do hit the across all the different channels we're streaming across. So if you hit the like button, you may draw other people who are subscribed or following and things like that, who just the algorithm is not notifying. So actually, Michael J. Pastor says that was my observation about introversion and extroversion. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me go and get that. Okay, so this is the super chat, Michael. Thank you. Okay. Yes, I've said this before that the Labyrinth is the introverted journey and the hero's journey is the extroverted, the first two poles of Jungian thought.
Yeah, I think that is correct. And like I said, the inward journey within your native culture is fundamentally and existentially different than departing your native culture and then returning to it. It is existentially different. And these heroines taught me that. And I just want to say also that number one rule that we're really kind of digging into, and I think appropriately so, it will not help you if the character is poorly written. Poorly written heroines or heroes, it doesn't matter. You can't get around it. They either work or they don't. If they're not working at all, then there's only so much you're going to glean from that. So there has to be some decent, like The Shining works. That movie has lasted. So I don't want to throw Wendy Torrance out the window in a film and a book that are both completely successful. I want to look at Wendy and see what she's doing. And lo and behold, she's the heroine of the story structurally in every beat.
Okay, Bacon Gaming for $10. James, thank you, says, but everything exists in service to the story. And while this will absolutely constrain the broader value of non-protagonists, that's okay, because they only need to do what they need to do to serve the story. Oh, that's a fantastic point. So I think the story is about the protagonist.
Yes.
And so the other characters must serve that story. That, otherwise they need to get out of here. In our modern, at least in our modern philosophy, like, okay, this guy's doing something. There's this scene, and it doesn't help anything. Okay, we need to get rid of this. So, in light of that, if everything exists in the service of the story, yes, and while this will absolutely constrain the broader value of non-protagonists, that's okay because they need only to do what they do to serve the story.
Right. Now
so why do they exhibit these traits?
Because they're okay. So this is great, James, because even what you said, even that statement can break down into one of two things. One, a functional mathematical secondary character that just serves the plot and becomes forgettable and not very effective, meaning I need them to find a MacGuffin. Then here's a character and they give them the MacGuffin. That's not well written. So you're probably not going to glean too much off that character. However, good writers tend to introduce side characters that are all believable and seem to be alive and functional in their own way. And what I'm saying is, even in a portrayal in a book or a great story or a popular story where there's a secondary, let's say, female protagonist who has some critical problems that there's some criticism there, she's still probably doing something, if she's well written, that fits with this other structure if you follow her. And it helps me to understand how she fits into the story, both in terms of how she or he is serving the plot, serving the story, and also helps me make sense of that character beyond a potentially reduced role in the story. So you're right. Not everyone is the lead character. So there are going to be stories where there are women who are not leads. That doesn't make the character a reductive role in that case, nor does it have to be about her. It could be a story about him. It could totally be a story about the male hero, and that should be fine too.
And that's actually one of the most interesting things I think that has come out of this, because I had started with a hypothesis. I mean, a year ago, more than a year ago, okay, about the idea that there are the archetypes that we come up with are something deeply psychological to humanity. As a hypothesis, if we're starting this discussion, like this could be true. And so the fact that when you come up with, it doesn't have to be a male, but often a male that enters the female story, or a female that they exhibit either the hero's journey or the heroine's labyrinth archetypes. The fact that happens is fascinating to me.
Yes. Well, usually it's at the hands of a good writer. And a lot of the stories, a lot of the literature, a lot of the films and television shows that I studied were ones that excelled in the public sphere, ones that were quite popular, and ones that people really grabbed a hold of. And to me, that's a clue that there's something right in this story. And when there's something right, there's something you can pull out of there, you know. And so these secondary characters, like I said in Star Wars with Princess Leia, when I watch A New Hope now, Princess Leia is now elevated, and she was already at a pretty high position. I'm a big fan of Princess Leia, but now that I'm looking at her through this lens, her stock has gone up even higher, because now I see what she's doing, and that's why I was like, man, I wish if Lucasfilm was going to do any other of these like female-centric stories, tell the first part of Leia's story, because we pick up in the middle of the broken truce, which is great. But anyway, I would love to see how she got involved with the rebellion. This is a militant group of people, and she's a princess. How'd they get together?
I didn't know that was a super sticker in the StreamYard system. I don't see the super stickers, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh.
I didn't think about that. Hey, Retro is here. Hey, Retro
Nerd Girl, what's up?
We were talking about you earlier on the stream. So that's Retro Nerd Girl. Be sure you click and subscribe to her channel, because it does got some 3 different shows over there. So lots of stuff.
And her and I really went through, man, a multitude of movies with female protagonists. And one thing that we did on Retro's channel that was really cool is we analyzed heroines that worked, and we analyzed heroines that didn't work. We had a hour-long discussion about Rey Skywalker or Rey Palpatine, and why from an archetypal standpoint, Rey's character doesn't work. She's missing she doesn't have a lot of these archetypes. So to me, it's like, well, I don't know there's no structure for her, and she kind of falls flat. And that's not to knock anyone who likes her, but there's reasons why I think that character failed.
Let's see. So we got so many comments. I've been clicking star a few of them to come back to, but right now we'll also go forward. But James Bacon Gaming says, for $5, thank you. Says non-protagonists are only the protagonist if their story is told, period. If it remains untold, they are not a protagonist. Reading into them is speculation.
Well, to some extent, but when they start to follow, like Princess Leia, when they start to follow certain patterns or models, then I can reconcile or understand that character better. Like I said, Andromeda. So I have in the book, and we might be able to get to this later, the intersection of monomyths, where I even said, if you care about heroines, like this book does, then we want to know a little bit about Andromeda, right? Is it fair to say that she's nothing because of her reduced role in Clash of the Titans? My answer may have been yes at one point, but now it is no, because now I can see structurally she's also in a captivity bargain, and a pretty freaking dangerous one. So now I see right here the intersection of, oh man, that light.
We're going to get to that. I've got that on there.
So we'll cover that then there. But what it does is it explains the two characters in through a structural lens. James, you're still right.
Explaining them also as a whole, as if they are parts of a whole.
Right. So for one example, if we look through a feminist lens at Andromeda or Princess Leia in Jabba the Hutt's palace, through that lens, we could see a character that we don't like because it's a reduced role, or she's wearing skimpy clothes, or there's valid criticism for why we should be dismissive or reject entirely this character. So even though what you're saying, James, is that, well, if they're a secondary character, we shouldn't look at them any other way. Unfortunately, there are literary criticisms or ways to view stories where entire dissertations are written about Eowyn in Lord of the Rings. That's not her story. She's not the main character. And yet Eowyn has lived on in our imaginations, and she has an expanded role in the films. Well, she's like the ultimate shield maiden. So she shares these structural elements. So having this extra lens to look through when I'm looking at Lady Eowyn in Lord of the Rings, I now see her in some segment of a larger story, even though her role in, the Two Towers and Return of the King may be a reduced role. That's all I'm saying.
We now have 60 people watching, so I believe this is
awesome.
the most
That's great
table talk ever. Thank you all very much for being here.
Hey, congratulations, Heath.
Thank you. And Michael had sent another super sticker. So that's a super sticker. So thank you very much, Michael.
All right.
So now let's just look at this
real quick. One more follow up for James. James, also there's also, if you're looking at story, if the lens you want to look through is this a good story or not? Is it a good plot point or not? Does the scene work or not? Then that lens it's not as important perhaps. And you could say that, I'm just going to appreciate Lady Eowyn because she was a cool part of the story. Totally valid. That's another lens. Pure entertainment is a lens with which to view a story. So that works too.
Okay, so I think we can actually move through these other ones faster, but we will see.
Yeah, the other ones
probably not. This is table talk. But okay, the primary focus is on the art of writing and storytelling. So I think we've covered that one. So this is not social commentary. This is not a work of social science. This is a work about how to write better stories.
Right. Many of the other books I've read, which were good books. The Heroine with 1,001 Faces by Maria Tartar. The Hero's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch. The Heroine's Journey by Gail Carriger. The Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Meander, Spiral, Explode by Jane Allison. You read these books and they're trying to help writers. The problem I had while reading them is, although the books were excellent books, they didn't always stay focused on writing in a way that was useful to me as a writer. So that's why number 2 became so important. I didn't want to get into the social commentary or like a feminist critique or anything. I wanted to only look at it at story and keep myself kind of in that one lane. So that became very important.
Okay,
and you'll see this with writing today. Like sometimes they're like, this is like they'll put a character in a story and they're like Rose Tico that me and Retro were talking about. Like, look, we have this new character and it's good. There's representation and that all may be true, but is it useful to the story? So if you're following rule number 2 and you always stay focused on story, it keeps you out of potentially weakening a story for other purposes. And those other purposes may be perfectly valid. But for this book, we're going to stay focused on storytelling and just storytelling.
Okay, number 3 is the archetypical patterns and themes must be distinct and reoccurrent in heroine-centric stories.
Right, which means they came from my study of stories with female protagonists. That's what that means. That this is where they came from.
Okay, wait a minute.
Druden Fuzz, that's exactly right. Otherwise, I would have been a TIE fighter and I would have crashed into the wall of the trench.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So wait a minute. So Michael J was sending something in.
In fact, Druden Fuzz had contacted me, and she brought up some totally valid points that, as far as I was concerned, were peripheral to what I was trying to do when I wrote this. And that rule number 2 might explain why I didn't address any of those issues, Druden Fuzz. I had my first draft started with 85,000 words, and 45,000 of them were addressing social issues and other expanded discussion, and it was destroying the book. It actually made it almost impossible to read without getting hung up. So I took 45,000 words out, and I kept the 40,000 on that was just about writing, and then I fell in love with the book again, and we ended up with this. Yeah,
I think that's so important. In academic writing, which I come out of academia, I mean, you write a sentence that says the purpose of this article is to blank.
Yeah.
And then that's what you're trying to do. And then other people will come in and say, well, no, what about this? What about that? Well, you didn't, you go back to that sentence. You say, but no, all those things are interesting. They're worthy of further analysis, but they're not in this work because the purpose of this article is to blank whatever you wrote.
Right.
And that's your defense. So that's part of this right here, that the focus is on storytelling and writing. So
correct.
That's what you're doing here.
Correct.
Okay. So number 4, we'll approach story structure as intuitive, semi-sequential, and flexible rather than formulaic, linear, and fixed. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So one of my big turnoffs, it used to be something I liked, actually. I would read books on story structure, and they would get real rigid on me. But the more I became a writer, the more I began to resent being boxed in or being told that you have to write this way or it has to be in this order. And then I began to realize that even the words themselves sounded a little like math. They're like, plug your story into this grid. Let's follow the formula. And I'm like, those are mathematical terms. I don't like that. As a writer, I know I need structure, but I want the freedom to be creative and to be expansive and maybe break a rule or two. In fact, Christopher Vogler says you should break at least one rule when you write a story. So that number 4 was to protect myself and everyone reading from feeling that you're going to be boxed in by this, that you have to follow this. What I'm saying is you don't. This will be useful to you, and in some cases, hopefully very useful to you, but do not feel boxed in by it. If you want to skip an archetype because it's not working for your story, then skip it. Don't let this do all the work. You're still the writer. You're still the creative. You have to bring the power and experience to the story and the sense of drama and tension and storytelling. You have to supply all that, but this will help you out in terms of organizing your story. So that was meant to be to let writers know, hopefully, that you're in good hands here in the book. I'm not going to pin you down with a rigid, draconian structure that will solve all your problems. This is going to be, I'm going to ask you to participate. You're going to have to be intuitive when you write. You're going to have to bring the other half of it. So that's what that was there to address.
Okay, Sable for $5. Thank you, Sable. Says Sable, $5. Re.3. Batman enters his captivity bargain at the very end of the Dark Knight when all the conflicts are resolved and the narrative wraps up.
Yes. So one of the aspects, I'm sure you read this now, but part of the captivity bargain is the hero or the heroine in this case does so willingly, and they usually do so for social order. That their independence is creating some sort of social disorder. And heroines are confronted with this a lot. Like Moana. I want to go explore the ocean. Yeah, but if you do that, that's going to screw up our culture. So why don't you not care about what you care about and just accept our role for you instead? So you're right. That is a captivity bargain. It's done willingly, and it's done to restore some form of social order. And that's where we get that great line. He's not the heroine we need right now, but he's the hero we deserve.
He's the hero, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so actually, you have in this book follows the idea of the tarot, like following off of that, which is point 4, intuitive,
Yes.
semi-sequential, and flexible rather than formulaic. So that seems to go with this tarot structure that flows throughout this entire book. So how does this point 4 relate to the tarot, and why did they even come up?
I grew up reading books that gave me structures, and it was almost like I said, I call it the mathematics of writing, or the mathematics of creativity, which almost seems like an oxymoron. However, if you want to be a good writer, you have to learn grammar, you have to learn structure, you have to learn sentence structure, you have to learn story structure. So there is some math to writing. However, the math to creativity and the math to writing can sometimes suffocate the creative process. Tarot cards, this wasn't in the book, but somebody told me, a male friend of mine, they're like, you can't write a book about feminine story structure because they're like, women, this guy said, women don't like story structure. They don't like structure. And or archetypes. He actually said structure and archetypes. So I didn't believe that. And almost immediately after the statement was made, to where it was in my head, I was at Barnes & Noble, and I saw a tarot card section, and I got into a discussion with the woman right there, and she was telling me how to use them, and she was very excited about tarot cards. And I have friends who use tarot cards, and of course, they're fun to look at. Anyway, I realized that these are totally archetypal, and they have a structure. There's an arrangement. There's a way to read them and interpret them, and but there's some randomness to it. So I was like, you know what? A lot of women like tarot cards. I was like, maybe there's something to a different approach to structure that I will honor in putting this together, instead of an engineer's grid of like, this is the way to do stories. What if I followed the structure and intuition, which is the key ingredient to structure that I think is so valuable? Tarot cards have that, and so it gave me a chance to introduce the concept of structure in the background that puts intuition in the driver's seat, but still maintain structure and archetypes simultaneously. Tarot cards totally do that. And it's a subtle way to stay focused on structure in a way that doesn't feel like I'm doing that. So that's why I did that. And hopefully hopefully that works. I had a discussion with Nancer Ballard at Brandeis, and I almost got the sense that she was upset that those were in there. Really? She's highly intellectual. Well, she's very intellectual, and she's like, why'd you put tarot cards in here? So I almost got a sense that from an intellectual, academic standpoint, the tarot cards seemed unnecessary to her. That was just an impression. She didn't say that. I just wondered if she thought that.
I can see that. As I was reading this book, I know you have been approaching academics with this work, and I can see elements of this about why an academic would not like it. I mean, I can see that. That would be one of them. The focus on modern stories is one of them,
right?
I mean, because I know there is, or at least when I was in academia, maybe not true now, but I would suspect it's true now. But when I was in academia, there is resistance to studying these kinds of things.
Of course.
So when you're talking about Tangled and Batman and all of that, and you're like, now this is something that's telling us something that is important. There is going to be resistance in academia to doing that. Like in geopolitics, there is an area of geopolitics called popular geopolitics.
Yep.
And
Populism.
Sometimes people in popular geopolitics would talk about the representations of, for instance, North Korea in different movies. And so like what type of, imagery, or what type of, what is that communicating and impressing upon the general population if, when you represent North Korea in certain ways, and how does that change through time in different movies and things like that? Or what do comic books say? And there have always been a few things written about that, but they're generally, at least, like I said, when I was in academia, generally looked down upon. That, okay,
Right,
you got to move past that. It's time to stop talking
academics
about comic books.
Right. Academics don't like popularism. That's like the bad version of a study. But I had to make up my mind at some point while writing. Am I writing this for academia initially? Are they my target audience, or am I writing for writers? And because of rule number 2, I knew who I was writing for. I'm writing for writers. So, like, if James Bacon's working on a story, I really care that he can use what's in this book to help his writing. So I kept, someone like James Bacon or Druden Fuzz in mind. Like, writers are who I was doing this for. Writers is who I kept in mind. Otherwise, I think if I focused on academia, I'm not saying I couldn't have done it. I mean, you could include different things in the analysis, but I don't know if writers could have used it as easily if I included a bunch of references they've never heard of. Because the problem I had while reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces is, as an academic book, it might be brilliant, but to help me write my story, I need something else. And thank God Chris Vogler came along to interpret these ideas and repackage them in a way that I could understand as a writer. So in a sense, I was trying to do what Campbell did in the sense of introducing the ideas, but I wanted to do it the way Vogler did it, which was in order to be useful to writers.
Yes, this is practical. This book is intended to be practical.
Exactly. So that's what guided that thinking.
Okay, let's go to this right here.
Oh, the intersection, right.
There we go. Okay, so on page 65, if you're following along, if you have Doug's book, which Doug's book is The Heroine's Labyrinth right here. So if you have Doug's book, we are now on page 65. And I don't know that this has come up explicitly, but on page 65, you have the monomyth intersection, where you talk specifically about the intersection of the hero's journey arc and the heroine's labyrinth arc. And I think this is fascinating because you were talking about how these two things weave together, much like the yin and the yang, like we have talked about before.
Yes.
So
you want to know the secret?
Do you want to start by explaining what this is and what this means?
Well, real quick, I want to point this out. This drove me nuts, but we ended up not being able to solve it in time. There's this weird built-in flaw in this diagram. The heroine. Well, it's funny. I'll share it with your audience because it's kind of a funny flaw. The heroine is the yellow one, and if you look, it's a circle with a arrow. That's the male symbol.
It is. You're right. That's the male symbol right there.
That drove me nuts. So that really was bothering me so much that the heroine symbol there is actually
a graphical issue here. I see.
It was a graphical problem in my mind. We couldn't solve it in time for the publication dates. But again, so I noticed as I began to advance through many stories, and really I started to put together the Heroine's Labyrinth as a workable structure. Like you, and you saw even here on Table Talk, while talking with James Bacon or Sable Phoenix or Michael Pastor, we have discussed and identified on our own stories that seem to have both. There's hero's journey elements, and then there's Heroine's Labyrinth elements. And so I began to get kind of interested in how these are working together. And I decided to include this as an example to help with what we just talked about initially. Rule number 1. So, for example, if someone else is having a problem with Andromeda in Clash of the Titans or Princess Leia, let's say in Return of the Jedi, since those are the examples we've used, well, here's what's going on then. This is one lens to view this that may not tick you off, that may not get you hung up to the point where you cannot appreciate if you're upset to the point where you cannot appreciate the heroine, then maybe you're missing something. This at least gives a lens that might restore the heroine without invalidating the criticism. So this is kind of why I use this as an example. So Andromeda, she is in the middle of her captivity bargain at the same moment that the hero is in his supreme ordeal. right? He's coming in. He slayed the Titan Medusa. These are not small feats, Perseus. He has done some of the most heroic things, okay? So this is huge for Perseus. So when you shift the lens onto Perseus and you see him swing in on the back of Pegasus with Medusa's head, and there's a giant city-destroying Kraken in front of him, I'm not ready to throw that story away because Andromeda is not portrayed positively or portrayed in a way that is free of all criticism. I'm not willing to throw the whole story out. Secondly, we have Andromeda there. She's chained to the rock. Her native culture put her there, right? This diagram explains what's happening simultaneously, and it does it in a way that I can now sit and watch that scene in Clash of the Titans and appreciate both characters and all the drama that's going on, even if I can still sit down and discuss everything wrong with the scene or wrong with Andromeda. I could still have that conversation. I at least have this to help me sit there and watch that and appreciate Clash of the Titans, a great story, free for a second, because I understand that technically, if she's in a captivity bargain, that technically Andromeda will have to solve this issue with her native culture at some point in the future. So,
by the way, there are now 62 people watching, and if you're wondering what in the world we are talking about, we are talking about Doug's book, The Heroine's Labyrinth. And if you are just coming into this conversation, well, on this channel, there's probably about, I don't know, how many hours about the conversation of The Heroine's Labyrinth, your book, before it got published, Doug? 50 hours.
We a lot here on Table Talk.
So, I mean, you are coming into the extra graduate level analysis and breakdown we're not going over the high level, that we're not going over, I don't know, it depends on which way to go, high level, low level. We're not skimming by. We've talked about The Heroine's Labyrinth a lot, so look up on this channel if you want the overview of The Heroine's Labyrinth, because it's an alternative story structure to the hero's journey, which Doug has identified that often occurs in stories with feminine heroes. And what that means, we just talked about that. If you skip that part,
you have to go back and watch that. That was an important.
There's a lot of material on this. So on this channel. So I hope you'll go back and watch all of that. So it was like 15 months ago that Doug first appeared on this channel. Okay, so actually let's zoom in. So you do have, just so you see here. Actually, I don't know. Can I bring this up a little bit? So we got the hero's journey arc, which we have trials, allies, and enemies, and then approach the innermost cave. And you're giving an intersection right here. The hero will go on to reward and end Act 3, whereas the heroine's arc claims the sacred fire, ends up in, okay, so the hero actually went to the supreme ordeal. The heroine is in the captivity bargain, and then will go on to the call to adventure.
Right. So this explains what is happening in that scene with, we'll stick with Clash of the Titans. Okay, it gives us a way to experience what is happening. Instead of saying the only form of story is the hero's journey, and therefore Andromeda is a useless character, a secondary character with no sovereignty. She's, the bride as prize. Instead of looking at it and seeing all these flaws with her, this lets me look at that and appreciate Andromeda and Perseus simultaneously, because I understand structurally what is happening to Andromeda. And if I understand what is happening structurally, then I know she's got an arc, technically, that we haven't seen yet. My whole point was, in a lot of these fairy tales that focus on a male lead, at this scene, it goes, and they lived happily ever after. That entirely skips the rest of the heroine's arc. And to the feminist criticism, they are correct. We have a lot of stories where the heroine is kind of frozen in one of the immature parts of her story, like a maiden phase of her story. And therefore, what the feminist is worried about is that all of us watching these stories think, well, that's it for women. What I'm saying is absolutely not. Absolutely not. She's in a captivity bargain, and her underlying clash with the native culture, which we've outlined in the book, has not yet been resolved, regardless of whether Perseus shows up in this moment. It's great that he shows up, right? Okay. If you're chained with it, don't you want someone to come and get you out of there? So it's great that he shows up, but we haven't solved her problem yet. So anyway, it's something where I can watch this and appreciate both characters through this lens. And it also does not disqualify other ways to view a scene like that may include some criticism of the portrayal of Andromeda, let's say.
Then let's read exactly what you say under here. Let's look at this. It says, from the heroine's labyrinth perspective, we also have a heroine in the most dangerous version of the captivity bargain. Okay, the heroine is living out a terrifying conflict between herself, the native culture, and a masked minotaur. And if you don't know what the masked minotaur is, like I said, see many other videos we've done. The appearance of a potential heroic partner is certainly an interesting development in her life, but such an encounter never solves the underlying problems. The real issue here is that the hero's narrative journey is ending because he's about to go to reward, as you're saying.
Yes.
And they live happily ever after. Simply skips over the remainder of the heroine's journey because she's about to go to the call to adventure, according to this.
Right.
We see her in a single snapshot of her life, and her personal resolution to the captivity bargain remains incomplete.
Correct. So I can at least appreciate Andromeda in that scene, even if she's a secondary character in Perseus's story. It gives me a way to reconcile that from this framework. That's what this does. It allows me to do that. And this was something that came in late. And my point was, if you care about heroines and their portrayals in films, this could be useful to you because now you don't have to hate her when you watch this scene. You don't, like I've had, or Belle or some of the Disney princesses. You don't have to hate these characters. Why are we hating and turning against all of these great heroines in these stories? There's certainly valid criticism, but if you look at it through this lens, there's also more to her story. We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, so then let me ask you, I put a note over here. So what happens if in this moment the heroine saves herself?
Well, that's totally possible. And she does in plenty of stories too. So she should. Now, the captivity bargain does not require outside help. This is a captivity bargain that does feature that. A hero appears. In the hero's version of, he sees himself as the knight in shining armor, the guy who shows up to slay the dragon and get the princess out of the tower. That's so typical. So the hero sees himself as a knight in shining armor. She doesn't necessarily see that. As I point out in a later chapter, this is a beast as ally from the heroine's point of view. This is an obviously powerful, right? This is obviously a powerful individual and potentially dangerous. He could enslave her too. You know, we don't know. We don't know anything about this guy from her point of view. So, but he's come into her life. He's attempting to rescue her, like Luke Skywalker in the Death Star. This is good for the princess. This is outside help coming in. The feminist argument is, do not wait for outside help because it might not come. And that is a valid point. So in this story, which is about the hero, she's only got this small role. If you want to tell the rest of the story about Andromeda, get a studio, write the script, put it out there. We'll watch it. If you do a good job, you might tell us a more complete story of what happens to Andromeda after this point. What I'm saying is structurally, it's very suggestive that she's got a lot more to go, and that this isn't all there is to Andromeda. That's what that suggests, that there's more to this character. If you understand the heroine's labyrinth, we recognize she's only on step 2.
But if in this moment she rescues herself,
that's great.
But it seems like the hero will not then go on to reward.
Well, the hero doesn't even have to be there, is my point. We have a lot of stories like Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, where no hero comes to rescue the heroine, and that's perfectly fine.
Well, I know, but we're specifically looking at a diagram that is an intersection of the two. So I suppose I was interpreting this, like talking about this diagram where we have this intersection. So the knight shows up to save her, and the knight fails to save her. Instead, she saves herself. The knight will therefore not go on to reward.
Right. Then he fails. He fails his quest. Right. That's his, if we're focused on the knight, that's the end of his story. the dragon burned him to a crisp.
The dragon burned him to a crisp. She might still get out, but the knight fails. That he will not go under reward.
Right, and that's up to the storyteller. My point is, some stories aren't about a heroine. Some stories are about a hero, right? Like Perseus. But that doesn't mean we throw away the story, and that doesn't mean that we throw away Andromeda, is my point. And there's and this is my reasoning.
So, well, that was my question. So if we have her rescue herself and get out of the captivity bargain, we end up with a failed hero if he's present. So, well, in fact, it was brought up that you should talk about Shrek, because you do talk about Shrek in this book, because isn't that the case of Shrek? So you want to talk about Shrek here?
Right. So Shrek plays on all the classic fairy tale tropes of the knight in shining armor. And they even say at one point, like, you, and he's like, the camera pans up and he's like not impressive at all. And he's like grinning kind of. One of the common things I'm seeing, and I'm trying to think of which story I just saw this in, where the hero comes in and assists, but the heroine plays a more active role in her escape at the same moment, meaning they both contribute to slaying the dragon in essence and escaping the captivity bargain. So it's all up to the storyteller how you want to tell it. I'm just saying, if a knight rescues a princess, it doesn't make the knight a bad guy. That's ridiculous. He just did a heroic thing and rescued her. The key is to understand that that's not the end of the princess's story or the heroine's story. That structurally, she hasn't resolved her problem with the native culture at all.
I was going to talk about St. George and the Dragon. I put a note about St. George and the Dragon here.
That's the hero's quest, or the hero's journey.
Yeah. St. George and the Dragon is, I suppose, the second most archetypical dragon slayer that we've got, aside from Michael and the serpent in Revelation.
Right. But I would agree. In Western culture, for sure.
Yeah. Then the second only to Saint George would be second only to that. So Saint George is our hero's journey dragon slayer.
Right.
And then I was going to say, but the heroine.
Think about Star Wars.
Maybe we've talked about Andromeda, so we don't need to. But
right. So Star Wars, the Death Star is the dragon that Luke slays. Now, Princess Leia got rescued early from her captivity in A New Hope, right, Luke? And her comment is very dismissive, right? Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? But it's a good thing that he got her out of there. But when it comes to slaying the dragon, it's just Luke, right? But Luke also needs help. And Han comes back and Luke slays the dragon. He blows up the Death Star. The next scene is archetypal. The princess is there and she puts the medal over his head, which is archetypal in that sense. He's become worthy in a sense. His deeds have been elevated. He's become worthy of social reward by the princess,
All right. Let's see here. Where's my other note?
I got some good debates going on in the chat as well.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot going on in the chat. Wait a minute. I think this. I thought my next note was in the. Okay. It is right here. It's right here. Okay. I don't think this is. And I took out my other note. Oh my God. I lost my. Oh, this is actually going backwards. Oh my God. This is going backwards. Doesn't matter. I don't think. Because, hey, this is the tarot. You can draw them in any order. Okay.
That's true.
This stuck out to me. Let's go over here. Let's go over here because I don't think the subject of creativity had specifically come up here. We're talking about this. It's in the Sacred Fire. It's talking about the masked Minotaur, but we're in the section of the Sacred Fire. So you say, remember the words captivate and captive share the same Latin root, meaning to hold. The cursed Minotaur is devoid of creative powers. And it was really that sentence that struck out to me. The cursed Minotaur is devoid of creative powers. And so I believe the masked Minotaur covets the heroine's feminine essence. Would you like to talk more about the relationship between the masked minotaur and creativity and to the hero, the heroine,
Yes.
the heroine? What does that mean?
So early on in studying these stories, early on, I noticed that once you identify the masked minotaur as as really the villain of the story, there's this bizarre propensity for the minotaur to want to capture, possess, monopolize, or really torment the heroine. They're trying to capture these heroines, and at some point I was like, why? Why? The basic answers is or the primal, crude answer is she's beautiful, right?
She's beauty. It's beauty, right? It's beauty.
She is beautiful. So, but why? There's a lot of beautiful women out there. Why is the Minotaur obsessed with this heroine? And this happens in so many stories. It's amazing. It's almost like a pathological obsession with the heroine, like in Titanic. When she's like, I'd rather be his whore than your wife, right? Which is a pretty startling statement. She says that to him, and then she goes to leave. Why doesn't this guy go like, fine, screw you, I don't need you anyway, right? No, he turns around, he grabs the pistol of his gun, and he's shooting at them. That's not normal behavior. That's an obsessive level of behavior, but that's typical in heroine-centric stories. In Mad Max, Fury Road, the one from 2014, Furiosa wants to leave. They don't say, fine, let her go. No, the entire culture comes roaring after her in this epic chase through the desert and through sandstorms. So heroines, for whatever reason, in their stories, usually encounter a character that is not passive in their interest in them, but obsessive. So it became important for me to answer why. And just saying, well, she's beautiful, or he would like to sleep with her. Those are crude answers. That's not enough, to be perfectly honest, because there are other beautiful women. There's other women that this character could maybe sleep with. So it's not like she's the only option on the planet. So the Sacred Fire is where I began to develop an understanding of what it is that the Minotaur character is drawn in by in these stories. And I broke the Sacred Fire down into two components: the creative power and the attractive force. The attractive force is that which draws the Minotaur in. Even in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Jen Yu, who's she's kind of like a bad guy, but I'm like, if we focus on her and I call her the heroine, her Sacred Fire is Kung Fu, right? What happens when she fights? People look at her and they're drawn to her. Even like Li Mubai, he sees her and he's like, what? And he can't get his eyes off. Now, he's not a masked Minotaur, but just her fighting is attractive to look at. There's an attractive force there, right? In Amadeus, which Retro Nerd Girl and I just analyzed, in which the male character, Mozart, is structurally the heroine. People are drawn to him. He has a creative power. He writes music. He's a musician. People are drawn in by this. So the attractive force and the creative power tend to work in tandem, and they tend to serve a purpose that is relatable in real life, but serve a very vital function in the story. To draw other characters in, good and bad. There could be someone who's like, man, I'm really like, remember the movie There's Something About Mary? Talk about an attractive force that brings all sorts of characters in. Same thing. It's the same principle. But the creative power seems to be also one of the most interesting things. What is it about her that she cares about that's important to the world, that offers the world a creative something? It doesn't always have to be artistry. It could be, like I said, Kung Fu, a fighting style. It could be what I think the primal root of the archetype is, which is to create life. The ability to create life. That is a creative power. It could be to better society, like or Princess Leia. Her Sacred Fire was the rebellion. That's the Sacred Fire of human life. If she fails, trillions will die. Same thing with Sarah Connor. If she fails, 3 billion humans will be killed in Judgment Day. So the Sacred Fire is creative. It's a creative power that they tend to want to monopolize. So when I pointed out the root, it has a relationship to captivate, which is the attractive force. She's captivating somebody. And the Minotaur wants to capture her. Those words have the same root, to hold. So I just found it fascinating that those root words were almost identical, despite almost the exact opposing forces that they represent in the story term. So, like, for example, and I use this example in previous streams, but in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter wants access. He's the beast as ally structurally, and Buffalo Bill is the masked Minotaur. He's the hidden villain of the story. They're both drawn in by Clarice's sacred fire. And I thought about, I'm like, what is Hannibal getting out of this deal? He's like, I want a quid pro quo. You tell me things about your personal life, and I'll give you clues about Buffalo Bill's identity. And I just thought that was a bizarre exchange. And I was sitting there, and I'm like, I need to understand what this quid pro quo really is, because she's getting something I understand. Information, psychological profile of Buffalo Bill. But what is Hannibal getting? What's Hannibal getting from Clarice?
Right.
Like, if you had to answer it, what would you answer as? Like, what is Hannibal getting in this quid pro quo?
Well, he didn't get any physical, material improvements to his condition. The only thing that he got, and of course this is also drawing from your book, is intimate knowledge of her life.
Right. Intimacy. And it's not intimate details like her first kiss, right? It's specifically
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yes.
Right. And this is why the sacred fire is important to understand for a writer. Hannibal zeroes in on what happened to that lamb, right?
Yes.
She failed to save that lamb. She carried it for a couple minutes. It got too heavy. She left the lamb behind. And he goes, what became of your lamb? And she goes, they killed it. And he goes, that bothers you, doesn't it, Clarice? You still wake up in the middle of the night dreaming of the awful screaming of the lambs. That's not random dialogue. That's her sacred fire. Her sacred fire has become an FBI agent to save lives. Here's the story of where that comes from. She failed to save the life of a lamb. And the title of the entire story is a clue to her sacred fire, the silence of those lambs. She did save somebody. So he zeroes right in on that. So even though he's the beast as ally, he is still attracted to Clarice, not sexually. He's not trying to sleep with her. He's not just like, man, she's hot, I really want to talk to her. It's not that crude.
We have that in another character.
Right. But what I'm saying is it's not crude like that. He's physically unable to do anything about this anyway if he wanted to. He wants to be close to her sacred fire. That's what Hannibal gets. And he even says, I think it'd be quite something to know you in private life. He's fascinated by her. He's captivated by her. So, but this feminine essence of hers, or it's expressed as a feminine essence because she's a female FBI agent. It's her sacred fire. And what is Buffalo Bill, who's the doppelganger of the beast as ally? He's the masked Minotaur. He's also attracted to the feminine essence, but what does he do? He literally skins women alive and tries to wear their suit. So in both versions, there's the feminine essence that is at the heart of what is attracting both characters, and yet one is animalistic and brutal and tyrannical, and the other has ended up being supportive and adopting the heroine's cause.
Sable Phoenix for $10, I think, on this same subject says, question that came up related to this, Doug. What does the Minotaur wish to possess the heroine's sacred fire for? You mentioned that the possession is his goal, but I don't think it is. What does he want to accomplish by using the heroine that he can't do on his own? Would his desire not be his for power rather than simple possession? He possesses plenty already, but it does not make him happy.
Well, first off, I agree with you. Possession is not his goal. Possession is his strategy. So so we're both right. Or what I'm saying is you still are correct. And it doesn't contradict what I'm saying. The Minotaur is missing something. Usually there is something like you said. So the Minotaur as an archetype in and of itself is half man, half beast. It is the beast side that is dominant, and therefore the beast side that seeks possession, not as a goal, but as the strategy to get something that the heroine has, her sacred fire. So think of it like if you have untrained dogs and you throw a piece of meat, they just attack each other, right? It's an animalistic response to something that you want. And ultimately, that is the curse of the masked minotaur, that this animalistic side of them is going to be dominant, and the human side of them is their disguise. That's why a lot of masked minotaurs appear fair or pleasing or friendly. That's why they're duplicitous, because their humanity is what hides this terrible savage side that is dominant in them and dangerous. That's why they're the villain. So anyway, possession is the strategy, not the goal.
Okay. Well, I have one more. There may be other things, comments and questions that come in from the comment section, which is fantastic. But I had one more major note that came up. And actually, this one was kind of answered in the book later on, but it was not something that we've discussed, I believe, on this channel. So let's bring this up. Here we go again. Got to organize it. There we go. Okay. So we're in the Broken Truce.
Oh, yeah.
But you say, not all heroines. I'm on page 153, if you're following along in the book. You say, but not all heroines survive the Broken Truce. One of the great tragedies of heroine-centric stories is when the Broken Truce leads to the heroine's end. She risked everything to claim her sacred fire and to follow her path, and in the end, it resulted in tragic death. Sometimes, after racing through the menacing corridors of the maze, the heroine comes to a decisive dead end.
Mm-hmm.
What are examples of this? And this is fascinating. So this is a potentially tragic heroine-centric story. So I want you to talk more about what happens when you have the heroine die, when she doesn't succeed and she dies in this moment. What stories are there like this, and what are they saying?
Madame Bovary is an example. Thelma and Louise is an example that everyone probably knows. Conan's mother is an example of a shield maiden trying to protect her sacred fire. She's actually being a shield maiden in that moment, and she fails. She's decapitated. But Thelma and Louise is a great example, right? They wanted freedom, which is usually almost always tied to the agency side of a hero in sacred fire, and they get in trouble. And this effort to escape the labyrinth turns into a pretty dramatic broken truce. We know it's a broken truce because you see the imagery of the law enforcement bearing down on them. Actually, it's very similar to Mad Max Fury Road with the big chase, But these two heroines never reconcile their effort to find agency, to find their expression with their sacred fire and reconcile that with the native culture. It ends with them driving off of a cliff. Spoiler alert. But so that's one example. Anna Karenina is another one. She throws herself under a train, right? She doesn't escape the labyrinth. And so these stories to me are efforts by the writer to elaborate on possibly social flaws, because they're both dealing with their native culture. Thelma and Louise, they're not far in some foreign country. They're at home. And the same thing with Anna Karenina. She stays in Imperial Russia. With Anna Karenina, she has an adulterous affair with Vronsky, this dashing officer from the Russian Imperial military. And the affair affects him a little bit. There's a little bit of blowback that he has to deal with, but he quickly recovers. Anna never does. And in the end, all her efforts to reestablish herself come up short, and she throws herself under a train. These stories tend to give the reader a chance to reevaluate perhaps a social stigma or a problem a heroine is dealing with that is causing them harm that you might not even be aware of. But now that you've heard this story, maybe you'll think twice about it. So Anna Karenina is obviously the double standard of an adulterous affair, devastating for the woman not so much for the man, so it could change minds about social norms in a sense when you have a tragic story.
Okay. Well, Michael J. Pastor says, I guess in transition here, I hope Theodora doesn't end up doing this, Doug. By the way, how does writing on that go if you're so busy with all of your promo tour?
It's difficult. Luckily, so I always write in the morning, and typically I'll wake up at like 5. I'll go to the coffee shop and I will write for 2 or 3 hours, and then I'll come home. Now that the kids are older, though, if I'm not home when they depart at 7:20 to go to school, I will not see them till 4 o'clock in the day. And as a dad, I just don't want to not see my kids for the first time at 4 o'clock. So it's been really tough to sit down and write book 2. However, now that it's summer, I can go to the coffee shop, come home at 9 o'clock, and the kids are sitting here waiting for me. So I have all summer to get my writing done. I will sometimes rent a hotel room and write all weekend. And then other times I'll just force myself to write once I'm in a writing class. So it forces me to write. And I'm about 35,000 words into book 2 for Theodora.
Oh, nice.
The promo is definitely slowing things down, but I'm making tons of progress. In fact, I'm at an awesome point with book 2. And Sable, you're right. She does die of breast cancer at age 48, the Empress Theodora.
All right, there we go.
So anyway, the dead end is a story device. The tragedy, which that's a story device, and it draws attention to whatever led to the tragedy, whatever social issue led to this tragedy.
Is there anything else you want to say, Doug, or we'll take me?
Michael Pastor said something I wanted to.
Okay.
Oh yeah, right here. He goes, sounds like the step when the hero goes into the desert and reduces himself to his wild nature and needs fire to reclaim his humanity. Yes, so the beast is ally, the good guy, although he might be a doppelganger structurally in many ways to the masked Minotaur, the beast is ally, and we've covered this before. His menacing outer facade is the disguise. I'm dangerous, I'm bad, I'm all these other things. That's the disguise. The reality is he's very much a human being. And in hero-centric stories especially, the beast as allies humanity always wins out. He always ends up surrendering his claim to the heroine's sacred fire, even if he was initially interested in monopolizing the heroine himself. Beauty and the Beast is a great example. He tries to lock her up and capture her just like Gaston would. But we all know that he surrenders this claim to her sacred fire, whereas Gaston, once again, does not, and goes into a murderous rage. He storms the castle. He's a murderer. So, again, there's something in the heroine that the masked Minotaur is unable to let go of. He is captivated by her. He intends to capture her. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. That was a good comment right there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no problem. So I am shocked here actually because I didn't know how many people we would have here tonight because we have basically the record-breaking Table Talk live stream, 64 people, and Doug, I think that speaks to you a lot.
Well, and you as well. This is your community.
Well, thank you. But you came on this channel about 16 months ago or something like that for the first time.
Yeah.
And we've explored a lot of the Heroine's Labyrinth. So if you're new here, if you're just tuning in here for the first time, we were going deep into the Heroine's Labyrinth in Doug's book here. And I was critiquing things that were in this book that had not been talked about on this channel before. But Doug's theory here, the Heroine's Labyrinth, this book has been published now, but Doug was here on this channel before this book was even published, a year before this book. In fact, it was almost crazy that it was almost like a year to the day when Doug first appeared to the channel, and then we had the actual physical launch event to publish this book. So this book, I think, is going to become the counterpart to the writer's journey, which Christopher Vogler has been on this show. So I think that as this goes, this book is going to become the counterpart to that. It's the yin and the yang to that. And so if you were here, we went deep, and I was attacking, and I didn't mean to seem like I was attacking Doug, but I was going deep. Like what's the written here? So, but what you witnessed here was the culmination of about 16 months of discussion on this subject in this book that Doug has written, which is now finally published. And so if you were interested in the conversation that we have been having, you may want to watch some of the other videos and the live stream. We've got live streams. I've also been clipping a bunch of the videos. So they're clips of the discussions, but there are also whole live streams that are present in the discussion that you can start from the beginning with Doug articulating this particular theory of the Heroine's Labyrinth. And especially, I don't think I finished my thought in the beginning. I didn't think that this would not be a heavily attended table talk because of you, Doug, but because Acolyte is premiering tonight. So I was like, I don't know, everybody's probably going to be watching Star Wars tonight or something like that. That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, doesn't Star Wars is going on. And yet the night that Acolyte is premiering, we had the record-breaking table talk. So
that's awesome, man. That's actually incredible. Yeah, and by the way, and James, like always, I should be able to answer direct questions. So I never take it personal when especially if they don't feel like I've answered it and they continue to press to get more specific. That's not. I think only today people think that that's somehow rude. That to me, that's normal and necessary, especially in the discussion of big ideas. So I'll never take offense. I know the difference between someone who's asking me in earnest, very tough questions versus someone who's, trying to like character assassinate me or something. Someone who's mean spirited and trying to embarrass me in some way. There's a huge difference in those two types of questions. And I've never once taken your direct questions as something to be offended by ever. And same with you, Heath. Honestly, I think our discussions are better. Tonight was awesome, and it was
awesome. It was a fantastic discussion.
It was because you,
but the best table talk ever.
Yeah, well, there were some very not softball questions, and so the whole conversation elevates as we grapple with the power of the question and hopefully the power of the answer. And I'm not embarrassed if I don't know an answer. I'm not embarrassed if I don't have a good answer. It just shows that there's more to consider that I might not have considered yet. So
there are lots of great clips, I think, to be made from the show. I feel like I need to get on that. Okay, well, there is a lot going on. If you're coming in next week, we're going to be talking about The City of Reckoning, which is Brianna De Silva's book right here. We talk about the Brianna will be here with us. Brianna's often on the show. She's basically another regular, so we're going to be talking about her book. Everybody come in. Let's see. What are we talking about? Doug's book right here, The Heroine's Labyrinth. If you haven't got it, get it. And also, hey, rate it on Amazon. I'm going to go do that. So once you've read it, let's go rate it and write reviews on Amazon. Let's help Doug out. Doug needs more reviews on Amazon and stuff like that, and Goodreads. So let's go. I'm going to do that. Let's go Goodreads and Amazon. Get the book. Put it on Goodreads and Amazon. This is I'll put you can get to it on Amazon.com, but I'll put Doug's website right here in here. Doug's website where you can get to the book. I think it's going to change the world of our analysis of heroines. I think it is.
Well,
did I just see a super chat come in? Wait. Oh God, Sable, thank you. Sable sent in $10. I meant to bring this up. Actually, Sable, that's right. Okay, so actually, I had the same question.
Yes. So we changed the spiral.
Where is this? I'm looking for it.
At the last hour. Believe it or not, Heath, we were having a discussion with Christopher Vogler.
Right.
That is the old spiral. We were having a discussion with Christopher Vogler right here on Table Talk. And he asked me in a follow-up email, he's like, what does this mean, Mr. Burton? He's like, you have her spiraling in. And he said, I really appreciate the use of the spiral as a new way to view story structure. He's like, there used to be the line, then there was the triangle, then there was the Joseph Campbell circle. He goes, now you have a spiral. He goes, and he goes, but what does it mean? And he goes, it looks like she ends up in the maze.
Right.
And so I could not shake that out of my head. And so I went back and I studied all the forms of spirals again. And I found that the galaxy spiral features a wing in and another wing out.
Right. And then it comes out, right. It goes in.
So I
and then goes out.
changed. And by the way, my publishing consultant, I thought she was going to shoot me. I was like, can we pull? Can we pull the whole book out of Amazon, out of Ingram Spark, and change it to this? I don't know if you can see it or not.
So, okay, hold on. Let me bring that up. Let me solo you, Doug. I'll solo you. Here you go. Bring that up.
Can we change it to this, which shows that the heroine goes into the labyrinth, deep into the native culture, but then also comes out of the labyrinth. So that was important to me, that she doesn't end up trapped in the center. The symbol itself should show freedom, not capture at the end of the maze. So I took a new spiral and revamped it. So you guys have.
So this is an older printing of the book. So the new printing.
Yeah. So anyway, if you have one of the older ones, you have one of only a handful of those copies. If all of our dreams come true and this does go on to become important, at least in the discussion of how to organize a story, then you will have the book with the old spot. You'll have one of only a handful of copies. How did you get those? Where did you buy that on Amazon?
I got mine. No, I got mine at your book launch party.
Oh, at the book launch
would
party.
Have too.
Okay, so
this would have been a version that was at the book launch party.
Okay, so those. Okay, so then those had the older design in them.
Yeah, look, I got mine's hand signed.
Oh yeah, that's right, and happy to do it.
So that's Doug. Hey, please do, if you're here and you're not part of The Cultist is my web show. It's got its own YouTube channel. The Cultist, I'm going to put that in the channel. The Cultist is my comedy web show about modern day Lovecraftian cultists who just want to worship Cthulhu in a world full of people who don't understand. And that's I created it. I co-wrote it. I produced it. Brianna De Silva, who has been here on the chat and is constantly on the show as well, is the director and also the co-writer. The entire season 1, 10 episodes is on that channel. And tomorrow morning I will be live on, I don't know where that is. I'll be live on my Heath's Geekverse channel. Oh, right here. Look at this. On the Heath's Geekverse channel. Come and join. Talking about designing a role-playing game for it. So we're designing a role-playing game for it. We're getting so close to the end. Yes, that's right. TSL Frontman says, if you enjoyed The Guild, you'll likely love The Cultists. Right. The Guild was a major inspiration for The Cultists. The Guild absolutely was. So The Guild was an inspiration, and so was The Office. So come on over to that channel. Please enjoy. Heath's Geekverse is my gaming channel. We will be live tomorrow. We will be designing a role-playing game for that. And we're going to have a great time. So come on over. What?
Sorry, I'm totally sorry. I just saw a couple comments in the chat.
Okay.
And Michael Pastor. And so Sable said, what about an infinity symbol? It's like, the number 8. Which I'm sitting here thinking, like, that's a good idea too. And then Michael Pastor said, if you superimpose the heroine's labyrinth with the hero's journey, it creates the infinity symbol kind of accidentally. And that's pretty cool. So anyway, it's just working through my mind here. It's pretty cool.
All right. Oh yeah, and Robert may have won one of the giveaways at the virtual launch party. I think he did.
Yes, he did. I was happy to send one to Robert. Robert's been a great supporter.
Well, 66. I'm looking at 66 people. So I think for a table talk, 66 people who are concurrent. We are growing. Thank you, everyone who is here. Please do hit the like button. Yes. That'll bring more people here. 66 people. Thank you very, very much to everyone who has been here joining us live. And also thank you to everyone who's going to be watching this on replay. It's been fantastic, and we are glad to have you. And like I said, this is episode 101. So now we are starting the second 100 episodes of Table Talk. There's a lot on the channel. Obviously, we're just finding us now, man. There's a lot on the channel, and we are heading on to another extremely strong 100 episodes. All right. Well, I guess that's it. So
this
everybody,
was great, guys.
Yeah, this has been amazing. So I will see everybody tomorrow on the Heath Geekverse channel for the Cultist. Please go watch the Cultist. Go watch the Cultist, everybody. So
Yes.
should I send send the Discord link? So if you are not on the Raven Keep Discord channel, Raven Keep Discord, I'm putting that in right now. Come and join the Discord server. There you go. Boom. It just hit the chat. That way you can keep track of everything that's going on in all the channels. The Discord server is the place to be. Everybody,
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Congratulations, Doug. This was amazing. I hope this
Thank
book
you
goes
so
on to
much.
change the world.
Table Talk, and you in particular, Heath, has been just such an ally in this. So thank you very much.
All right. Later, everyone. See you in the morning.